Hi, I'm Declan, 22, and the last words I ever heard from my parents before I vanished were, "You need to learn gratitude." That's what they said when they handed my twin sister, Eliza, a luxury European vacation and handed me a $15 coffee shop gift card and a lecture. That same night, while they toasted champagne and called me ungrateful, I packed my laptop, walked out the door, and never looked back. They always told people we were the twins, like we were some inseparable unit. What a joke. From the moment we could walk, Eliza got the spotlight, and I got the shadows. At our 10th birthday, she got ballet lessons and a custom mirror studio in the basement. I asked for a coding book and got laughed at. When she got her driver's license, a brand new BMW, white with red bows, me, an ancient Honda, and a reminder that a free car is a gift, not a right. So, when graduation day came, some part of me still hoped maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me, that I'd get something that said, "We see you." I graduated with honors. I had a business-ready startup in my pocket, and they gave me a coffee gift card, $15. My sister, a first-class, 3-month European tour with a personal photographer and a handwritten note that said, "You deserve the world." I smiled, kept the gift card in my wallet, and thanked them. Then I lied, told them I needed to return some books to the library. I walked out of the restaurant, got in my beat-up Honda, and didn't go to the library. I drove straight to campus, packed everything I owned into 3 bags, and left a single note on my dorm bed. It read, "Thanks for making this decision easy." I didn't have a grand plan, just a drive, a laptop, and a hunger to prove that the kid they ignored for 22 years was about to become someone they couldn't ignore even if they tried. I crashed on a friend's couch that night, Jordan Fisher, my closest ally in the computer science trenches and one of the few people who truly got me. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a Red Bull, cleared space for my bags, and said, "You can stay as long as you need. But if you're about to go full Tony Stark, I want in." I didn't sleep much that night. My mind was buzzing, not from caffeine, but clarity. For the first time in my life, I had nothing holding me back. No need to win approval. No invisible leash disguised as family. I opened my laptop and stared at the prototype I'd spent 2 years perfecting, an integration platform that could revolutionize how businesses dealt with data. That same week, I met with Thomas Warren. Thomas was a legend, Silicon Valley's favorite angel investor. And thanks to Professor Harrington, I had a meeting on the books. I walked into that cafe with sweaty palms and imposter syndrome doing somersaults in my chest. But 3 hours later, Thomas had canceled 2 meetings and was sketching our scaling model on a napkin. "This isn't just better software," he said. "This is blood in the water good. I want in, $500,000. Seed round. Let's make some noise." And just like that, I had funding. 3 days later, I signed the paperwork. 4 days after that, we leased a tiny office in a converted warehouse downtown. Jordan and I brought on Alex Rivera, a cybersecurity wizard who had once hacked our campus Wi-Fi just to prove it was possible. The 3 of us got folding tables, mismatched chairs, and set up shop with 2 things: no budget for mistakes, and a collective grudge against every suit who ever said, "You're not ready." Meanwhile, my parents, radio silence for days. Eliza texted, called, left voicemails. She even DM'd me on Instagram, which she never did, saying she postponed her trip because something felt wrong. I didn't respond. Not yet. They had handed her the world on a silver platter and expected me to thank them for the scraps. I wasn't done building. I wasn't done becoming. But I could feel it, the shift. They were about to realize I was no longer the quiet twin they could ignore. I was the storm they didn't see coming. We launched our prototype in early June, and within 48 hours, it went viral, at least in the niche world of enterprise software nerds. Which, let me tell you, is a terrifyingly powerful group once you get their attention. A blog post titled "3 College Kids Just Made Oracle Look Ancient" exploded across LinkedIn. Tech execs started reaching out. Demo requests. Investor inquiries. A CFO at a major logistics firm even emailed me directly, "Can we talk? Your platform might be what we've been trying and failing to build in-house." For 3 years, I barely had time to process it all when Eliza showed up unannounced. Our office. She stood in the doorway looking like a lost influencer designer tote in one hand, sunglasses pushed up on her head, confusion and guilt battling it out on her face. I canceled the Europe trip, she said. I saw the article. I had no idea. Declan, what the hell? We sat in the tiny glass conference room. She looked around like the industrial lighting might give her tetanus. I watched her take in the scuffed floors, the cluttered whiteboard, the half-eaten pizza on the windowsill. This is what you left for? She asked, half accusing, half amazed. No, I said. This is what I chose. She fell quiet. I always knew they favored me, she admitted finally. But I didn't know it was that obvious or that cruel. It was never just about gifts, Eliza. It was how everything I did was good. Effort. And everything you did was you deserve the world. I built all of this because no one in that house ever looked at me like I could. She stared down at her hands, manicured, trembling slightly. Do you hate me? No, I said. I hated that I spent most of my life trying to be seen. But you just played the part they gave you. Same as I did. She looked up, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the polished, filtered version of Eliza. I saw my sister, the one who used to steal cookies with me at midnight and defend me in the 3rd grade when I got shoved into a locker. I don't want to be their golden child anymore, she said quietly. I just want to be your sister again. I nodded. Then start with this. Stop apologizing for their mistakes. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. But when she left, she didn't look back. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to chase her down. The next day, Thomas Warren called. You're about to get a lot of attention, he said. Be ready. I just mentioned you at a private investment summit. You're on their radar now. And just like that, the next stage of my life didn't just begin. It exploded. By the end of the month, we were fielding more emails than we could answer. I'm talking CTOs from billion-dollar companies circling back on calendar invites like we were some kind of mythical startup unicorn. One guy, head of integration for a global shipping conglomerate, offered to fly out personally just to see our tech in action. We hadn't even finished installing furniture in the conference room yet. Jordan had to hold a potted plant the entire demo because we didn't have a whiteboard stand. We signed 2 enterprise clients within 10 days. $120,000 in contracts, upfront. We used the money to hire our first full-time devs and a UX designer who actually knew what good color palettes meant. No offense, Jordan. But your neon green buttons looked like a frog got electrocuted. Closing parenthesis. And just as Nexus integration systems started catching real fire, my parents showed up. At the office. Without calling. Reception pinged me. Or Robert and Catherine Walker are here to see you. Should I tell them you're unavailable? I stared at the message. I hadn't spoken to either of them in over a month. Eliza had, apparently, told them everything about the startup, the funding, the tech blogs, the articles. Maybe even the $500,000 in seed capital from Warren. I told reception to send them to conference room B. They walked in like investors on a site visit. Dad in his tailored suit, inspecting the office like he was evaluating real estate. Mom wore heels too expensive for our unfinished floors and a look of vague confusion that screamed, this doesn't look like success. This is quite the operation, Dad said, gesturing at the open workspace. Very industrial chic. Declan, Mom began, tone sharp and sweet like an iced lemon slice. We've come to apologize. About graduation. About everything. Dad pulled a checkbook out of his blazer like we were at a car dealership. We want to make it right. $30,000, the same amount we spent on Eliza's trip. You can use it however you like. I blinked and then I laughed. Not mean. Just tired. I don't want your money, I said, calm as a monk at sunrise. Dad's smile tightened. Then what will it take to fix this? I looked them both in the eye. It's not about money. It's about decades of making me feel small. You can't buy your way out of that. And you shouldn't try. They didn't get it. I could see it in the way Dad clenched his jaw and Mom's eyes started to shimmer more from the loss of control than any real remorse. You never said anything, Mom whispered. You never told us you felt that way. I stepped back, leaning against the wall where we had taped our first wireframe sketches. You never asked. They left that day quieter than they came in. Not triumphant. Not forgiven. Just humbled. The balance of power had shifted. And for the first time in my life, they knew it. Things moved fast after that. Our name was now being tossed around in conversations that used to feel galaxies away. Nexus Integration Systems showed up in a Gartner newsletter. Gartner. I screenshotted it and stared at the email for 5 straight minutes. Then I turned to Jordan and said, "Okay, now we can afford chairs that don't squeak when you lean back." We upgraded the office, still in the same warehouse building, but double the square footage, and now with working AC. We hired a proper operations manager, 2 account execs, and our first client success lead, a woman named Priya who ran onboarding so smoothly our first client literally sent flowers. Meanwhile, Eliza visited again. No Instagram stories, no brand partnerships, just her dressed in jeans, sneakers, and a face I barely recognized, tired, thoughtful, and finally, real. We went to lunch. No parents, no drama, just 2 twins who were starting to feel like siblings again. "I'm applying to grad school," she said between bites of falafel. "Communications and nonprofit leadership. I want to do something that actually matters." I paused. "That's unexpected." She laughed. "Tell me about it. Do you know how weird it is to wake up at 22 and realize you've been a character in your parents' performance art piece, and that you didn't write a single line of the script?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I've known that since I was 10. She winced. "I'm late to the party." "Doesn't matter. You showed up. We paid the bill." She insisted. "I've got influencer guilt money saved up. Let me feel useful." That weekend, I finally responded to one of my dad's many texts. "Dinner next week." I picked the place. "You bring no speeches." His reply, "Understood. Just glad you're willing." The dinner itself was strange, a quiet and familiar kind of strange. We met at a mid-range bistro, no Michelin stars, no valet, just good food and real linen napkins. They asked about Nexus, not performatively, but with actual interest. They asked me questions and listened. At one point, Dad even said, "I read your blog post on integration latency twice." I didn't understand most of it, but it sounded important. That landed harder than any check ever could. They were trying, awkwardly, clumsily, but trying. Back at the office, our next contract came in $250,000, a mid-tier logistics company struggling with aging infrastructure and desperate for something modern that worked. We delivered. And then, our first international inquiry, a tech startup in Berlin, wanted a trial. I looked at the email, turned to Jordan and Alex, and grinned. "Pack your bags. We're going global." Berlin wasn't in the original plan, but honestly, neither was success. We landed the contract 3 weeks after the inquiry. A startup accelerator in Kreuzberg invited us to present to their portfolio companies. They even offered to fly us out and cover accommodations. I said yes before they finished the sentence. It was my first time outside the US. The irony of it wasn't lost on me. Eliza got a $30,000 Euro trip because she deserved the world, and I got to earn my way across the ocean, dragging to laptops, 3 power converters, and 0 first-class perks. But the second I stepped off the plane and smelled rain-soaked concrete and diesel taxis, I didn't feel behind. I felt unstoppable. We stayed in a converted co-working hostel with bunks made of scaffolding and a cafe that only served oat milk. Jordan hated it. Alex loved it. I barely slept, too wired from adrenaline and caffeine and jet lag. Our presentation was scheduled for Thursday morning. Wednesday night, I stood in the tiny courtyard of our hostel, rehearsing my pitch to a dumpster while 2 Berliners smoked nearby and watched me like I was about to launch a cult. The pitch itself, electric. We walked into that room of founders and VCs and blew the roof off with a live demo that shaved legacy system data processing from 11 minutes to 38 seconds. They clapped. Germans clapped for software. Afterward, the CTO of a fintech firm pulled me aside. "We've been trying to solve that for a year. What you built, it's elegant. I'd like to bring you in for a pilot." That night, we sat on the hostel roof with cheap beer and bad snacks and watched the city blink below us. "We're not the underdogs anymore," Jordan said, cracking open his 3rd bottle. "We're the F***ing blueprint." Back home, news had already started to spread. Thomas Warren sent us a congratulatory email that began, "Told you so." Our blog traffic quadrupled. VCS started calling, not emailing. calling asking if we were looking for series of funding. I walked into our now furnished office the following Monday to find two reporters waiting in reception. One from Tech Report, the other from Venture Index. I wasn't used to having a receptionist either. Her name was Leah. She smiled like this was totally normal. They said they can wait until your calendar opens up. They'll be here all day if they have to. I nodded slowly. A year ago, my parents barely acknowledged my app going viral at school. Now, Forbes was asking for a quote. And then came the mail that stopped me cold. Subject, family dinner for SVP. From Catherine Walkerdo, Declan Walker, your father and I are hosting a dinner next weekend. Just family. We'd like you to come. No speeches, no pressure. Just, be there. We're proud of you. That probably doesn't mean much, but we'd like the chance to start again. Love, I read it 3 times before I said anything. Then I whispered out loud about time. The house looked exactly the same. Maybe a little shinier. The hedges trimmed to perfectly. The walkway pressure washed like it was auditioning for a real estate catalog. I parked my used Tesla, one of the first big purchases I allowed myself after the Berlin deal between my dad's matte black Escalade and Eliza's newly downsized Audi. She'd sold the BMW, by the way. Said it didn't feel right driving a car she hadn't paid for. Stood on the front steps a second longer than necessary. Not because I was nervous, because I was in single quotes. Mom opened the door in pearls and bare feet. You came, she said, almost like it surprised her. She pulled me into a hug that lingered too long and still felt a little staged. But when she stepped back, her eyes were wet. I'll give her that. Inside, the dining table was set for 5. Just family, like the mail said. No country club friends. No business associates. No spotlight. Dad greeted me with a handshake that turned halfway into a hug. I've been following your company, he said. Impressive stuff. You're making a name for yourself. I already have a name, I said. Always did. He chuckled awkwardly. Touche. Dinner was weird. In a good way. We talked about my clients, my travels. Eliza jumped in to brag about me once or twice, and for the first time in our lives, no one cut her off to shift the conversation back to her. She didn't seem to mind. Mom asked thoughtful questions. Dad didn't check his phone once. Eliza talked about applying to grad school and how she was working part-time at a local nonprofit while studying for her GERS, and then, somewhere between dessert and dishes, my dad cleared his throat and said something I never expected to hear. I'm sorry. The whole table went quiet. I should have seen it sooner. What we were doing. What I was doing. I treated you like an employee I didn't promote. Always waiting for you to prove yourself more than your sister. And even when you did, I still missed it. He looked at me and added, I was wrong. Mom nodded beside him, tears slipping down one cheek. I think, I said slowly, you thought love was something we had to earn. That praise was a reward. They both nodded. I don't need your validation anymore, I said. But I'll accept your apology. If it's real. It is, Dad said quickly. We're not perfect, but we're learning. I looked at Eliza. She gave a tiny nod, like yeah, this is really happening. We didn't toast. We didn't cry. We didn't Instagram a damn thing. But we did load the dishwasher together. And Mom didn't once criticize how I stacked the plates. Progress. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat on my balcony with a scotch in one hand and the stars overhead. My phone buzzed. It was a photo from Eliza. All 5 of us are on the dinner table, and filtered. No one posing. Just people. Just family. Caption. Might not be perfect, but it's real. I looked at the image for a long time and smiled. Exactly 1 year after I walked away from a $15 coffee shop gift card and a lifetime of quiet dismissals, I stood on stage at the Global Tech Integration Summit in San Francisco, headlining the keynote with Disruption from the Ground Up, How Underdogs Win. It was surreal. A year ago, I was a college kid sleeping on a mattress in Jordan's spare room, building code between key help desk shifts. Now, I was CEO of a company with 22 employees, 7 enterprise clients, a series of funding round worth $6 million on the table, and a product being adopted in 3 countries. They called me a rising force in enterprise systems architecture. I used to be Eliza's twin. After the speech, I got a standing ovation. Not polite clapping. A standing ovation. People waited in line to shake my hand. One guy actually asked for a selfie. Another asked if we were hiring. Always, I said, grinning. I stepped off stage and checked my phone. One message from Eliza. You killed it. Mom and Dad watched the live stream. They both cried. Dad blamed the hotel onions. I laughed out not because I needed their tears, but because I finally knew I didn't need them at all. And in that freedom, their pride, late as it was, finally landed without bitterness. Back home that night, I opened my wallet. The coffee shop gift card was still there. And touched. I took it out, stared at the cheap font and corner creases, then pinned it to the corkboard in my home office, right beside our first contract, not as a grudge. As a trophy. That gift card didn't buy coffee. It bought clarity. The moment I stopped asking for permission to matter was the moment I became dangerous in the best way. My worth wasn't conditional. It wasn't dependent on parental applause or comparison to a more photogenic sibling. It was mine, earned, built, owned. Now, when people ask how I did it, how I turned a lifetime of being overlooked into something impossible to ignore, I tell them this: